Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 24th of September 2014. And joining me on this edition are Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
Every man dies, every man really lives.
News Editor Mark Hodgkinson.
It's all for nothing if you don't have freedom.
Games Editor Mark Botwright.
I can fight.
That was...
And Movies Editor Simon Crust.
I know you can fight, but it's our wits that make us men.
Yeah, okay then. Welcome back to yet another AVForums weekly podcast. A united AVForums podcast. A united lineup that's snivelling in the background, and we've got one missing miserable Englishman this week. And if you excuse me for just 1 second. Steve?
Yeah, I was blowing my nose. Since you just pointed out I was sniffing in the background. Hang on. Yes, Phil?
Has anyone died this week?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No, but there's still time, obviously, while we're recording.
If someone dies within the next hour and a half, we'll put it in the podcast.
You mean the next 4 hours?
We're not going to last 4 hours, not on this one. If we get to an hour, I'll be well impressed.
Yeah, so in terms of breaking news in the world of AV, this happened this week. It's been a rather slow news week.
Yeah, anyone would think that everyone has shot their bolts back in IFA and Apple and everything else. Now they've got nothing left to say until CES.
It's like that period, if you're not in the AV industry, where Christmas and New Year's happened, and you've now got January to get through. It's kind of like that period. It's strange. Nobody talking about anything at the minute. So we have
partly because we didn't get any projector announcements, did we? Really, apart from the Epson one, which was a nice surprise. It's been. Usually this time of year we'd be going on about JVC and Sony and other people, and it's been a bit quiet on that front, unfortunately.
Yep. So one thing that we have been doing this past couple of weeks is putting together our buyer's guides for this year and obviously the year ahead. And one of the subjects that you raised, Steve, and I'm not really sure whether we should... we might regret opening this up on the podcast, but it's one of these subjects where it's had a shed load of comments already, and it's only been live less than 12 hours, this piece. Curved TVs, and you posed the question, are they any better? Well,
think about curved TVs. I mean, you could sit there and make lots of arguments, and certain manufacturers do, that they improve your viewing experience, that you get better angles of viewing, that because if you're off axis, you're looking at your far corner is actually more facing towards you, so it improves contrast performance than you would get on a normal LCD TV. They say it's more immersive, which is kind of true if it's a big screen. Less of a case on, say, a 55-inch. I mean, you really can't call that immersive unless you're sat right in front of it. I mean, they say it'll give things more depth, which is also true sometimes, depending on the scene. And I do find it's actually quite effective with making 3D really pop and have more depth to it than perhaps some of the flat TVs do. But the question is, is it really just a cosmetic gimmick to differentiate TVs and get people to buy new ones? Which, in all fairness to the manufacturers, I mean, let's be honest here, we bitch and moan. Well, certain readers do anyway. But if they don't sell TVs and make money, they don't make any more TVs, okay? So they've got to actually sell these things and keep going. And they're trying to sell into a saturated market in the UK and most of the Western world and the US and Japan. And these are saturated markets. People don't buy TV. Most people, not maybe for forward readers who maybe do buy every year, but most people don't buy a TV every year. They buy one every 5 years, maybe even every 10 years.
10, isn't it?
Yeah, quite. So, you're trying to sell TVs every year. And if you don't sell enough every year, you get shut down. We're talking about only 2 weeks ago, we were saying, would Panasonic survive? If they don't start making money in the TV division, then it's a big, huge conglomerate that makes plenty of other things that make money. So if they're not making money with TVs, why bother? And that's the problem. If these companies don't make money, they'll stop making TVs. And what are we going to buy then? We'll end up with a bunch of cheapo brands knocking them out and they're big rubbish. So, I'm all for them trying to find ways to differentiate their products and trying to get some interest out of the consumer and to sell products. At the end of the day, they need to make money and sell TVs. Otherwise, they're not going to make any more TVs. They ultimately, I think largely it is down to a matter of personal preference. Some people love the curved TVs. I think they look really great. I know one guy was pointing out that they don't look that great when they're on a wall mounted. I've seen some that have been wall mounted. I thought looked quite nice as well. But it's true that the curve doesn't really go that well with a flat wall. But and a lot of other manufacturers, I mean, obviously Samsung have kind of been leading this particular trend, and all the other manufacturers have jumped on board now because pretty much everyone copies Samsung these days. And I spoke to the chief operating officer of TP Vision Philips and said, why are you bringing out a curved TV? And he said, purely to give consumers choice. If they want to buy it, they can buy it. If they don't want it, they don't have to. So it's not really that they're they particularly believe that it's adding any real value, but everyone else is doing it and they want to be in there. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of the manufacturers. But I mean, certainly Samsung genuinely believe that having a curve to your screen adds to your viewing pleasure.
Yeah.
Some people probably agree with that. Some people won't. I think it's a bit of a Marmite thing. Basically, you're either going to dig them or you're not going to dig them. Reading the feedback so far, the majority of people aren't that keen. Majority of enthusiasts aren't that keen.
AVForums readers.
Quite. But certainly when I've had curved screens in the lounge and people have come in, and seen them, like my parents thought my parents thought it was great. Actually, they really liked them. My girlfriend thought it was a bit,
people came in, your parents and your girlfriend. You don't have friends, Steve, so don't pretend.
Girlfriend? When did that happen?
You really have been gone a long time, haven't you?
I've been gone a little while, but I mean, what?
Yeah, well,
Phil was away in Canada.
Yeah, that's right.
No coincidence, I don't think. Off the leash.
Anyway, she wasn't particularly keen on the curve. Sort of made her eyes feel funny.
Are we talking about the TV now?
Yeah. She wasn't that keen on the TV either.
Right, in all seriousness, it is a serious subject. So I know that myself, Mark Hodge and Steve have seen curved TVs and been up close to them. Mr. Botwright, have you seen a curved TV? Have you been up close to one?
Nope. No, I haven't. And to be honest, I don't feel any great enthusiasm to do so.
Okay.
Put simply, I think I think the manufacturers are slightly almost playing with fire a bit here, which is, it's fine to say that you're giving people choice, but if you continue throwing out lots of kind of small little iterations, little things that could be dismissed as being gimmicky, sooner or later people just stop kind of paying attention. And I don't think they're getting that feeling that in fact there's a kind of upgrade cycle, that in fact the technology is getting better. It just feels like they're bolting on more things to it, which makes people kind of almost step back from it and want to wait until there is something truly groundbreaking, another real generational leap in the technology before they even bother thinking about upgrading.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting comment. I've heard very similar, Mark, from people that I know, and I'm not going to name them and I'm not going to name the companies, but certainly they've said, it feels like certain companies out there are throwing as much as they can and hoping that something's going to stick. And it seems to be that they're doing that with TVs, they're doing it with mobile phones, they're doing it with tablets, and they're just throwing out as much as they can, hoping that something's going to stick and the consumer's going to like one of the things that they throw out there. And to a certain extent, I kind of agree with what they're saying there, because with OLED, one of the big things with OLED was the flexibility of the screen. So you could understand why LG and Samsung went with a curved OLED screen, because A, it was showing off how slim the screen is, and also the flexibility that you can flex an OLED screen. But then we suddenly got all these LED, LCD TVs. We've got Samsung saying that they're not really that interested in OLED. We'll come back to your interview in a sec, Steve, with Mr. Kim, because he did say some really quite interesting things in that interview. I don't get it. I just don't get the sudden need for the curved screen, other than like you say, Steve, they're trying to sell TVs, they're trying to create a marketplace, and I'm not pointing just at Samsung here. Everybody's at this. Well, everybody apart from Panasonic, I think, have released a curved screen. There is no technical reason that I can see, and it seems a bit gimmicky, and I think the public, certainly our readers, think it's gimmicky, and I think the public at large as well maybe see it the same way, and could, as Mark suggests, get a bit tired of all these different things coming along and trying to get the consumer to spend when they necessarily don't need a new TV at this moment in time, or the technology's no different to what they have at home other than the curve.
They're selling quite well, aren't they, though? With the 4K ones, Samsung say 3 out of every 4 4K TVs they're selling is a curved one. And that's not because
how many uncurved 4K TVs does Samsung have, and how many are they selling?
Yeah, well, that's it. You don't get the hard numbers, so you got to guess the numbers are low. But even that's 75% is quite indicative that people are actually quite liking it on the shop floor. I mean, my own personal feelings of it does nothing for me whatsoever. But then it doesn't really do any detriment to the picture. So I can take it or leave it really. But
I've sat like 5 feet away from the 105-inch curved Samsung screen. And yes, you get that, wow, this is quite immersive. I'm sitting 5 feet away, you know what I mean? And it's a 105-inch screen. Now, there's not many people going to be able to afford the 105-inch curved screen or have the space for it, or fit it in the lounge. And you're not really going to comfortably sit at 5 feet away from it.
No, I mean, I had a 65-inch one here, and I was sitting 5 foot, and it was just the odd time, the odd scene, and as Steve says, a 3D. But you almost find yourself waiting out for these scenes, so you're kind of spoiling your enjoyment. So you're justifying the curve almost. You're just waiting for something with a depth of field shot to get to actually give it some slight bit more impact. And I don't know. I think what upset me about the curve trend was it seemed to get in the way of OLED emerging. So we were expecting CES last year to be the real sort of launch pad for OLED, and multiple manufacturers doing it, and then all we got was curved LEDs, really, wasn't it? Which was slightly disappointing. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to our movies editor. Simon, what do you think of it? Have you seen one? Have you been up close to one? And what do you think of the whole curve and giving you the movie experience as they claim?
Okay, well, yeah, I've been up close and personal, but not in a home environment, only in a shop floor environment, and I don't really do much for me at all. The 4K curve does look quite good. Otherwise, I can't see it doing anything for me at all. I even sat in the where was this? Down in Malden. I can't remember the name of the shop, but they had one of these home cinema setups with the 7.1 with the big 3D and the curved screen, and I'm sitting there going, no, I much prefer my Curo. I don't know what that says about me. Old, maybe.
And are we being negative for negative sake? I mean, this is something that, I guess the finger could be pointed at. I mean, I am surmising here that the vast majority of the listeners to this podcast do not see the point of a curved screen. They see no technical reason to have a curved screen, so probably not on board with it. But at the same time, and it's something that Simon mentioned, it's something that Mark's mentioned, it's something that you mentioned, Steve, is they do look nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that I think some of the Samsung curved TVs are very attractive. With the curved stand and everything. I mean, they are good looking TVs. And if you talk to Samsung, and he said, look, we don't just produce stuff on the off chance someone might be interested in it. They thoroughly market research this stuff before they ever get around to actually producing them. Their argument is we create what consumers want and not necessarily create things and then try and convince the consumer to buy it. Because their argument is we don't want to just create stuff and then try and convince people to buy it, which I think is a valid point. And certainly, they said it's been selling very well. That the feedback's been excellent from consumers. Now, again, you could say, yes, 75% of their 4K TVs have been curved ones that they've sold, but that's probably how many of their 4K TVs are actually curved. Because I think only this 7500 is flat, right, Mark?
No, there's another one, isn't there? HU.
Was the 8200?
82, yeah. Yeah, I don't think they're particularly choice limiting it. It just seemed to be more popular with the consumers. But of course, they are marketing it extremely heavily. So everything's about the curve with Samsung now, isn't it? So everything you see is curved based. So I guess it's the power of marketing.
And it's not just Samsung. I mean, obviously we're talking about Samsung here, but at IFA it was everybody bar Panasonic basically. I mean, even Sony had a curved screen, which I was quite surprised that I didn't think they would go down that particular road after what they did kind of said in their press conference at CES. I kind of got the feeling that they were, along with Panasonic, not really sure about. But I guess if Samsung are selling them, if LG are selling them, if everybody else is selling curved TVs, I guess it's only a matter of time before Panasonic have to jump on board and curve their TVs
I'm sure
as
they'll
well.
take the same view that TP Vision Philips did, which is, at least give the consumer the choice. So if they want one, they can buy it. If they don't have to. But I guess it's, you don't want to be left out or left behind and suddenly find that everyone's making curves and everyone's buying them and you haven't got one at least to put on in the shop floor. So
yeah. The other interesting thing I'm going to pick up on from your interview with Mr. Kim was OLED.
Yeah.
So basically he's talking about market research, what people want and all the rest of it. So I'm surprised that they still are not fulfilling the promise with OLED.
No, I mean, he was very honest about OLED. He said, look, it's as far as we're concerned, it's too difficult to make and too expensive to make currently. It's just not viable as a mass market product. He's not entirely sure it ever will be. And he said, we think that we can deliver equally as good performance from an LCD television as you can get from OLED. Anyway, possibly, and this is what he said, a performance that could surpass it. Using other technology. So, it looks as though, at least for the time being, Samsung are, they had some OLED screens there, didn't they, Phil? But they basically are saying, we're going to concentrate on 4K and LCD technology, push that as far as technology will go. And I guess, if you think about it, if they can deliver a good-looking picture at an attractive price, then they're going to sell, aren't they? I mean, this is a competitive market.
But then you've got to look at LG, who, I mean, they're OLED at the minute that's on sale at the minute is $2,999.
Yeah, that's the old one from 2 years ago, right?
Right, but there's one there which is now getting into affordable money. It is a 1080p screen, but it's still an absolute cracker, and the price is coming down now. So it could be that Samsung and everybody else get left behind because LG have cottoned on early on that to do this technology, you do it with filter, basic, with a filter over the top, and then they don't have the issues of the proper RGB system, which is of decay time, especially with blue, because blue seems to last no time whatsoever. That's the problem that Samsung are supposedly having. So it could be that LG run away with OLED, and I'm surprised that Samsung are going along that line.
Which is probably worth bearing in mind, as he said, in order to get OLED to a point where it's going to be a mass market product with a realistic price point, is going to require a gigantic level of investment, which is, I think, pretty much what LG have been doing. So LG are taking a bit of a risk here.
Yeah,
because if it doesn't work out, they could really be stuck. But
at the same time, we spoke to Toshiba. I had a closed door meeting with two of the head TV people from Panasonic, and they said that they are now, when it comes to panel agnostic, so they will buy in what they can from the marketplace and then add their electronics and everything else on top of that, which is really quite an interesting thing for especially those two companies to come out and say that they will buy in, which immediately says to me, well, if LG are selling their OLED panels cheap enough, then LG are going to make a killing. It's going to be like JVC with VHS.
Possibly. I mean, I'm sure that's what LG are hoping will happen.
They're already clean up in the panel market, in the LCD panel market. They sell, LG Display sells tons to third parties, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of the TVs we review are IPS panels that originate from LG, and if they can, as you say, if they can position themselves in the market with OLED like that, they're going to be in an extremely strong position. Do you think Samsung's heavy concentration on curved TVs possibly is to fudge the OLED issue? Because obviously it was going to be LG coming out. We're marketing the OLED TV, and they've got this curve to show off, and LG can, Samsung can just say, well, we've got the curved TVs. As far as the consumer's concerned, do they know the difference between a curved LED and a curved OLED?
No, they won't. There's going to be a degree of consumer confusion, isn't there, about this? Mm-hmm. Because when those first OLED TVs came out, as Phil said earlier, they were curved because you can easily curve an OLED screen. It's very flexible. And it made them differentiate them from normal TVs. So because obviously people are already going to say, well, how is an OLED TV different from the LED TV I've already got? Because that's what they've been pushing them as for the last 5 years. Now, if you have all your LCD televisions are curved as well, it's going to make it difficult for LG to differentiate their OLED product, or any other manufacturer for that matter, from everything else that's in the shop.
It's the same with 4K and 1080p and curved, and it seems to be that every part of the market has a curve at some point. So you're going to have 1080p TVs that are curved. You got 4K TVs that are curved. It used to be that it was just the 4K TVs, but now we've got 1080. It just seems like everything's going to be curved at the minute.
And your smartphone, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you watch Avatar, they've got curved screens in that. So maybe James Cameron was just ahead of the curve there. Maybe
ahead of the curve. Nice.
Boom, Tish. CDs in the foyer. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Try the veal.
Play the tumbleweed.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, it's at the end of the day they've got to sell tellies, otherwise they're going to go out of business.
Yeah, so I know exactly what you're saying, Steve. But at the same time, and I guess as enthusiasts, the same as AVForums members, we've heard all this before, and like you say with LG as well, they're a little bit guilty of crying wolf. we've heard the PR spiel before. We can make an LED TV look better than the plasma. We can make LED TV look better than OLED. I don't buy it. All they're doing is they're making sure that they get their money's worth out of LCD panels because they are dirt cheap at the minute. They can be easily manufactured. They can be made to curved. They can be made flat. They can be made into this size, that size, the next size. It's where they're making their bread and butter. It's where they're selling TVs at the minute. And OLED's going to have to wait. And LG are making the investment. I see other people buying their panels in and launching their things, but it needs to be at an affordable level. So I think at the minute, as enthusiasts, I think we're kind of knackered for the next year or so in terms of any major advancements when it comes to TV tech, because I think every major company, bar LG, are now sitting back and thinking, right, well, we can say this in our PR, we can up the picture quality a little bit, but let's just stick to selling LCD TVs.
Yeah, probably most of them are just sitting there, particularly not counting the two big ones, but everybody else is now sitting there thinking, we've got to make some money in this market, so let's buy in the panels, let's go for the cheapest providers, let's cut the margins a bit wider, ship some volume. I mean, talking to TP Vision, who took over the Philips brand, when they took over the brand, it was certainly in a lot of markets, certainly in the UK, it had really dropped off the radar a bit, hadn't it? People weren't buying Philips TVs, and they had to rebuild that brand. So they were all about pushing relatively cheap models, getting some volume in there, getting some margin back, and now they're starting to do higher end models. But initially, it was about getting back in the marketplace. I think Toshiba are doing something very similar. Sony been very different. Sony are really putting their stall out. It's all 4K for them, isn't it? That's what their whole business structure is based around now. It's 4K. But Panasonic, they're really kind of, with the exception perhaps of the 902, they're looking for more volume, more margin, and actually making some money in that marketplace for once, after having been losing quite a bit in the last few years. And we'll bemoan the fact that this time last year we heard the news that plasma was going, and unfortunately, a replacement that's equally as good in terms of picture quality is yet to appear.
Very sad.
Happy
Christmas. Cue the sad music, Phil.
Yeah, but
4K Blu-ray.
That's how it looks at the minute. And then normally, when we get to this point in a conversation like this, we say, "But let's look at the projector market because that's where real enthusiasts look."
Cue some more sad music, Phil.
Some more sad music, unless you can go and buy a Sony projector, and there's still some JVCs out there you can go and buy, but what's happening to R&D? I mean, is it a case of they were burnt last time around, and the companies are just being really, really careful in terms of their costs when it comes to producing product? Are we now seeing the backlash of what happened in 2008 onwards, that they're going to be far more cautious when it comes to R&D and R&D budgets, and we're going to find that we're living with the same technology for longer than we possibly might have been?
Possibly, Phil. I mean, they really got burnt on 3D, didn't they, basically? 3D was a massive bomb.
It was their own fault, wasn't it, really? I mean, I think every commentator out there, every person in the industry said, why? At the time, they said, why?
Steve.
Yeah, I was a big fan. Well, I think it's telling again the Mr. Kim at Samsung, and Samsung are the world's most successful television manufacturer, right? The biggest manufacturer of TVs in the world in terms of profits and market share, and they're loath to do massive investment into OLED. So if they're not too keen on doing massive investment, then what chance have people like Panasonic or Toshiba or even Sony to a degree got? I mean, they just don't have the money to do that kind of investment. I mean, LG clearly have decided that it's the future, and they're going to put the money into it, and hopefully they succeed. I hope they do succeed, because it's good for us if we get lots of nice cheap OLED TVs. But it's a risk.
Just give me a second. I'm just doing a quick search here on Google. Samaritans.
So I know
just looking up three-breasted girls, triple-breasted girls.
Yeah. Okay. So there wasn't much in the way of hardware news, but we managed to fill in 30 minutes or do that slot. So well done, guys. We'll be back in a sec with some games news. So, Mark, am I going to need to use the old tumbleweed sound effect again, or is there some games news this week?
No, well, there is a little bit of games news. There hasn't been a lot. Tokyo Game Show's been going on, but broadly speaking, that's kind of catered to the Japanese market. There haven't been any great surprises, but one thing did hit just before we went to record, which was PlayStation TV. We finally got a European date and price for it, which will be 14th of November, and it'll be £84.99.
Okay, so for those of us that have no idea what PSTV is, why don't you tell us?
Well, it's basically it's a Vita in a box without a screen, really. It's designed to plug into your TV so you can play Vita games. You can download them, or you can use the cards that they come on. You can download PSP games and PlayStation 1 classics as well. As long as you pair it with the DualShock 3 or DualShock 4 controller, then you've got gaming, a kind of a micro gaming console on a TV. But the kind of interesting feature of it that has a lot of people, kind of hankering after it, which is it acts as almost like a streaming box for your PlayStation 4. So you can stream PS4 gameplay to a different screen. So if you've got your PS4 hooked up to one TV and that's, in the lounge and the family TV or something like that, if you need to, for £85, you've got a box there that you can stream your games and be playing on another screen.
Is that multiplayer stuff?
Well, for anything. Single player stuff, whatever you're playing on your PS4, it's just streaming it to a different TV.
What's the lag like? I've not seen any reports. I've not actually read a single review on this product, but I can imagine the lag's quite bad, isn't it?
Obviously, I'd assume it depends on your home network and how you're hooking it up as well. As with anything streamed, obviously, you would assume a little bit like with remote play on Vita or with the PSP. Anything multiplayer, you're not really going to necessarily want to play that way. However, for single player games, I can't see how it's going to affect greatly for the vast majority of titles.
But one thing, when it first was announced quite a while back, was it Marchish or something? There was the mention of third-party apps. Now, how's that going to unwind in the UK? Are they giving any details on that? Like, the likes of the world's favourite internet TV service and that kind of thing. Will it have Netflix and Amazon TV and all this kind of stuff?
I think that's slightly up in the air at the moment. I would assume that does come through in time, because I believe it's been out since last year in Japan, when it was kind of called PlayStation Vita TV. I think they've got Hulu on it, so therefore that would indicate that Sony are kind of fine with putting services that will rival their own, Music Unlimited and Video Unlimited. I wonder how that will exactly work with regards streaming. Obviously, I mean, it won't be simply a case of streaming from a PS4 that is streaming, because you would assume that would put in a lot more lag. But yeah, I can't see any reason why they wouldn't end up going down that route. I think the biggest kind of hurdle for most people in the short term will be the fact that it's still, obviously, because it's basically a Vita in a box, it's still using Sony's proprietary memory. So it's got 1 gigabyte on there. You can expand it up to 64 gigabytes, but they're not throwing anyone a bone to use that that SD card that's lying around or anything. You've got to buy the Vita memory cards.
I really do like the sound of it. And if I had a PS4, I think I'd definitely jump in straight in.
Steve's got a PS4. Steve, you interested in this?
Yeah, actually, I would be. I would be if I had another TV in the bedroom or something like that.
But you're short of TVs?
Buy a curved screen and put it on.
It's not that I'm short of TVs. I just don't agree with TVs in the bedroom, because I think the bedroom is for sleeping in. That's true. Yeah. So
you need to escape from.
Well, you're gonna have TVs everywhere else, so I don't want it. But no, I mean, if you had a TV in a bedroom or TV in a study or something, and you wanted to play a bit of PS4, then actually I think it's quite good. I did actually get a look at this and play with it at an Argos event back in the summer, and it seemed like a really clever idea actually, and it's a relatively cost-effective way of getting additional access to your PS4 without having to buy another one. So I quite like the idea. I think it's good. But you're right, Mark. I imagine it will be just for playing games, not for online gaming. You would be much of a lag. You need just be for playing against, even playing a game on the PS4 itself. There might be a bit of a lag there.
Yeah, I mean we've been through this with remote play, which is, for some people it works better than others. Certain titles it will obviously work better. It's worth bearing in mind. I mean, if you're looking to kind of put it on a second screen and you've got another very big screen, I think it's only going to be 1080i 720p. So for PS4 games, if you take into account that you are streaming it anyway, and that's just going to be at best native 1080p, perhaps it won't make a great deal of difference, but it is what it is. It's under £100. You're getting a streaming box that you can access your £350 console from. And I think from Sony's point of view, it's kind of another kind of satellite device, another thing that they can put extra little services on. If you look at the kind of Apple model, which is ubiquity, kind of having iTunes, having an app store, having everything on various different devices, so it kind of mirrors the experience. And if they do kind of roll out PS Now, their streaming service for the older PlayStation titles, and right up to PS3 games, then it could be a great little box.
I noticed when I was at IFA, Philips were doing a demonstration of Android TV platform and things like on live gaming. And I've got to say that the quality of stream gaming these days is getting much better. I was quite impressed with it, actually. So, it's interesting alternative to having a console.
That's the kind of thing, though. You often see there have been lots of demonstrations, which I think the question with most people is always the same thing, which is how will it work on my home setup? How will it work on my network? Kind of download speeds, upload speeds can vary so wildly that it's the kind of technology that you imagine taking off very quickly in the Far East, in Korea, in places that are very much hooked up with super fast broadband, that are getting speeds that most of us can only dream of. However, if you've got like a lot of people, like Steve on the games team's got a connection that still makes, shall we say, the average Skype call a little bit shaky, then you've obviously, you have to consider that. You have to factor that, which I think that's possibly a reason why they haven't just gone full square for streaming. Everyone hasn't just looked to kind of bypass the console while we have got another generation of, traditional boxes that play discs, just because perhaps we're just not at that stage yet.
And wrapping up with games, Games Podcast was finally published, Mark. People might not have listened to it yet. So
you've got to wait for quality, Phil.
So what? Yeah, whatever.
That's why this one's so punctual.
So why should people go and listen to it, apart from the lovely Yorkshire accents?
Well, obviously, other than the lovely Yorkshire accents, very much we go into Destiny. That's the kind of big topic at the moment, and so that's, I think, what most people are interested in. It's still kind of rumbling away in the background, and it's strange, even the fact that a discussion on something like Destiny, it can go on a while, but even the short time that the game has been out, it's shown that it's evolving so quickly. Can you tell me what else we chatted about on it?
I actually listened. I can't tell you what you chatted about, but I didn't.
What was the word actually doing in that sentence?
That's the first time I've listened.
Yeah, so I take it you listen to this podcast, do you, Mark?
Me? Yeah, I do. Oh, him? No, I don't think he does.
Of course I do. Do I make the edit?
Now and again.
Yeah.
Someone doesn't die.
Well, that's the thing. Has anybody died yet, Steve?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I'm keeping an eye on the news so far, though. Everyone's healthy.
Good. Right, so that wraps up games, and we'll be back in a sec with movies. At this point in proceedings, everybody else goes for a pee, and Steve, what's at the cinema?
Well, this week I went to go and see Pride, which is it's a true story, in fact, about gay and lesbian activists who basically raised a load of money to help support the miners during the miners' strike in 84, 85. And I've got to say, I thought it was an absolutely fantastic movie. It's funny, it's heartwarming, it's very moving at times. It's got a great cast. The performances are superb. It was easily one of the best films that I've seen so far this year. And not just, because I'm a particularly left-wing. I mean, it's a very left-wing movie. If you don't like the miners or you're a big Thatcherite, then you're probably not going to enjoy it. But It's a great movie. It's really well done. I mean, obviously, it's based upon a true story, so that means you have certain narrative path you have to follow. But I really like the way the film doesn't necessarily pander to what you expect. It doesn't. It's not over schmaltzy or sentimental, although it is. There are times when I did, blub a little bit. It is genuinely moving. I think the cast, which includes Bill Nighy, who's superb in it, as always, Paddy Considine, who's excellent, Melda Staunton's very good. The young guy who plays the main gay guy in it, whose idea it is to help support the miners, he's actually American, and I did not know that at all. He was really, really good playing what is basically a sort of slightly camp Northern Irish accent. But I mean, in fact, he was American. Really, I found incredibly surprising. He was superb in it. I mean, the whole cast is good. It's really heartwarming and sweet, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was a really fun movie, and it's very, very funny at times. So in a week, when we're getting sick of giant robots and stupid action films and films that are these days made to appeal to a mass international audience where slapstick and action and no dialogue and no real plot is basically easier to sell. It's really good to see a small English film that's actually really hits the nail on the head and is both entertaining, funny, and moving.
Is it an English film or is it a Great British film?
Well, it's actually BBC Films, so yeah, I think it's British.
It sounds like a BBC thing.
Yeah, so British. So it's a United production.
I mean, it's set in London and it's set in Wales, in South Wales. So yeah, it covers a fair bit of Britain. There's some very nice shots of the Severn Bridge, which made me feel quite homesick. Yeah, no, it's a great movie. I give it. I think I give it 9 out of 10. I'd say it's one of the most enjoyable films I've seen this year. And I've seen a lot of rubbish this year, I've got to say.
We're not going to go into any great detail, but you did raise a question about politics and what side of the fence that people fall on, and that this is quite left wing. Did that in any way impede your enjoyment of it?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, I've read reviews. There's been one famous one that was in the FT where the guy was slagging it off for sort of perpetuating this left-wing myth of the miners' strike. Now, I remember the miners' strike. I was 18, 17, 18 at the time. And Thatcher, whatever you might think, Thatcher set out to break the miners. She used the police as a military force effectively to do that. There was a lot of violence on the picket lines. There was a lot of bad feeling. The miners held out for a year. There was a lot of hardship. People were starving. There were food packages being sent out. They had no money, and which is what the sort of behind the genesis of the plot in the film is that the gay and lesbians felt they'd been abused by the police and spat on and treated badly, and that's what's happening with the miners. So they felt an empathy towards that and a certain brotherhood, and that's why they started raising money for them. All of which actually happened. So whether or not you agree with the miners' strike, and as it happens historically, Arthur Scargill was absolutely right. The Coal Board did have a list of mines that they intended to close. So it was actually what the miners were saying at the time was true. I personally, think that the film doesn't actually go into it too heavily in terms of the background to what was happening at the time. It's more about the people. It's a people story rather than just a big political. I mean, there is a degree of politics to it, but I think ultimately it's about the people rather than the politics. But I mean, there's lots of films you could enjoy and not necessarily agree with the politics of that film. So regardless of your political beliefs or sexual persuasion, I think you'll find the film really enjoyable.
Right, okay, well thanks for that, Steve. And Simon, moving on quickly, Blu-rays released next week, what are they? Okay,
there's a number of that are coming out next week. A large number I actually haven't heard of. Fading Gigolo? No idea.
That's, directed by John Turturro with Woody Allen in it.
Doesn't mean a thing. Who's Woody Allen? I jest, of course. No, I have not heard of that film. Blended?
Blended is that bloody awful film with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore that looks so bad that if you were stuck in the cinema, you would have gnawed your own arm to get away from it. I mean,
why is it in this listing?
Well, it's coming out next week.
We shouldn't promote it. We shouldn't promote it. If it's that bad, we shouldn't promote it. Let's not even mention it.
That's a shame because Sandler and Barrymore.
They have made a few good ones in the past.
Yeah, well, some really good ones.
Wedding Singer.
Yeah, Wedding Singer is one of my favourite films.
Yeah, that's a great movie and it's really sweet. And I didn't even mind 50 First Dates, which was kind of funny. But this one just looks like a steaming pile of shit.
It says an AVForums spokesperson.
Yeah, put that on the poster.
Is that a new recommendation badge?
Steaming pile of shit.
Moving on, The Following, Season 2. I didn't even see Season 1.
What's your job title, Simon?
Yeah, well, I like what I watch when I watch what I like, but I've never heard of this.
Actually, I've never seen The Following. Has anyone else seen it?
No,
Anyone
I've no idea what it is.
It's not a Netflix only thing. Okay,
Hodgkinson,
moving on.
You must have seen it. You see every TV
What?
series.
I don't. No, I've not seen The Following. I've never heard of it.
Great stuff. We're doing well.
Well, it's got Kevin Bacon in it. It's not like it's an unknown series.
Yeah, but he's in everything.
Is that the one where he tells you which mobile phone to buy?
It's a serial killer thing. Yeah, another.
Yeah, it's
serial
James.
killer.
It's James Purefoy, who I like because he's a West Country boy. But
not in that one.
Bacon. It was created by Kevin Williamson, who also created Scream. And
So
in
this-
it, a brilliant and charismatic yet psychotic serial killer communicates with other active serial killers and activates a cult of believers following his every command. Actually, sounds quite good.
This sounds actually quite good.
Sounds quite good. I'd
And
love
we're
to watch that.
we're on
I think
season 2.
one's on Netflix, by the way, just to get a quick plug as usual.
It's on the N word, is it? Oh, well, I'll have to go and watch it then. Right, quickly, Simon, what else is available?
Okay, carrying on. Black Sails, season 1. About pirates, maybe?
Top
No
notch.
idea.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Is that good, yeah?
Over the top TV series, yeah, really, really good.
What, in the vein of Spartacus or
violence.
something like
Yeah, like in the vein. It's Spartacus on the sea, basically, like that kind of thing. Lots of sex violence and over the top CGI. Yeah, it's good fun.
Brilliant. Sounds like a purchase there then. And now is something we have heard of. Walking Dead season 4. I'm really looking forward to this. Because I don't have the Netflix or whatever, so coming out on
You
Blu-ray.
make it sound like a disease, Simon.
Well, it could be.
And
So I'm
what
looking
is
forward to that one.
and the disc recommendation of next week is
For me, it'd be The Professionals, which isn't on this list, but it is coming out on Monday.
Okay.
Season 2 of The Professionals
okay,
in
and
glorious HD. And if it's anything like the first season, it'll be fantastic.
okay, so that's the Blu-rays coming out next week, and obviously something I was made aware of because I read the running order. Friends, the TV sitcom, started 20 years ago and it ended 10 years ago. And Steve has put in writing on a page here, is it the greatest sitcom ever? No, it was absolute tripe. I didn't get it then, I don't get it now. I really have no interest whatsoever in 20-something, middle-class 20-somethings in another country doing stupid things that they just wouldn't do in real life. And I just did not get it whatsoever. Anybody else?
I didn't mind it. I was certainly nowhere near the best sitcom ever, but I didn't mind it. I was probably in a new relationship, so I probably had to sit there and watch it with my girlfriend at the time.
Hang on, 20 years ago, that was 1990. You wouldn't have remembered it anyway, Mark.
No, that's true. But I probably just sat there in a daze thinking it's all right, and she was quite pretty, or whoever it was.
Yeah, it wasn't a hateful show. It was, kind of easy watching. And it did mature over time. It got better. The characters got more defined. And there were some good catchphrases in it. It wasn't hateful. I wouldn't say best sitcom ever, not by a long shot. But it had a massive following at the time.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
so
It
does,
seemed to hit a chord at the time with a certain
yeah, but then
degree of people.
you've got that now with what's that one, The Big Bang Theory. You've got that one,
Yep.
and what was the other one, How I Met Your Mother or whatever it is, and they all kind of follow the same thing, don't they? And I could never get into it. There was nothing there that I could relate to.
Every time you watch an episode of Friends, it's like, oh, it's the one with that. And, oh my God, it's the one with that. And you realise that there's so many funny scenes in just 1.5 hour episode, 20-minute episode. So I would love the show. I think it's really funny. I think the characters are well defined. The actors were well chosen to play those parts. It's very funny. I mean, it's it's one thing to say
none of them have
40
escaped
Towers
their
is
roles, have they?
no, not at all. And none of them have really had successful film careers since. They've always been in the shadows of those. I mean, even Jennifer Aniston, who you'd probably say out of them all has been the most successful outside of Friends. I mean, she's done some bloody awful films, hasn't she? So she would just get a new agent for one thing. But I think it's a great show. I think it's easy to say, 40 Towers is the greatest sitcom of all time. There's 12 episodes of 40 Towers. 12 episodes. You have to do 24 a season, and there were 10 seasons. That's 240 episodes of Friends, and to be consistently funny for 240 episodes. I think
But that's assuming that you think it was funny to start with.
It's hysterical.
No,
Great
it's
show.
not hysterical.
Comedy's
Funnier than Fawlty
subjective.
Towers. I know it's totally subjective, but did you laugh as much as you did when you were watching Fawlty Towers?
Yeah.
Proper belly laughs
probably.
at Fawlty Towers. Really? Christ.
No, I don't think so. What Friends had going for it was it continued, didn't it? It was a story over 10 years the characters kept evolving, going on and on and on. People kept coming back in. It had loads of guest stars and something. Where something like 40 Tales was only 12 episodes. It's just a different way of making television in the States, isn't it? There are 22 or 24 episodes per season.
Yeah,
you don't get that in England now. They're not made like that here.
They're not. Generally, because in England there's one writer, writers in America they have a writers pool, a
writers
pool of
guild.
Well, they'll have a creator or creators. Like I think in the case of Friends, it was Marta Kauffman and David Crane. They created the show, but there would have been like 20 writers working on. Sorry, it
was Fraser's brother, wasn't
it? No, that was Niles.
Funny
enough, David Crane and Marta Kauffman also created Mad About You, and Lisa Kudrow was in that playing a character called Ursula Buffet, who is Phoebe's twin sister.
The sister of.
Yeah, so I mean, they was a kind of a spin-off actually, originally Friends from Mad About You,
which was remade in this country, and it was crap. Did you ever see it?
Mad About You, UK, no,
the UK remake.
I didn't watch the American one either.
Oh, the American one was okay. It had Helen Hunt and the guy
Paul
from
Reiser.
Yeah, that's
Paul
it.
Reiser.
Yeah, it was okay. It was okay. It had that really deadpan American comedian Steve somebody. I forget his name.
Right.
Yeah, fantastic. One of my favourite comedians. That's probably why I watched it. But they remade it in England with the guy from Gregory's Girl, whatever his name was, the ginger
John
from
Gordon
Gregory's
Sinclair.
Girl. Yeah, and it was just awful, almost scene for scene remake, and it was just crap. Unbelievable. Anyway.
Right, Mr. Botwright, you want to have a word?
Do you have any friends?
Oh, hardy heart. It was of its time, I think. I don't particularly like it, and I'll be honest, I don't really like anything that follows the kind of blueprint that it's set. But it was like kind of, stuff like the Big Bang Theory and stuff like that. It was inoffensive. It was, it's just is, people find them relatively amusing, but greatest sitcom, I don't even think it's close.
I like Big Bang.
Do you like Friends? It's worth watching episodes with Matt LeBlanc, which was also created by David Crane. Where it's really funny and it pokes fun at the whole US networks and comedy shows on that. But LeBlanc plays a fictional version of himself in the TV series. It's excellent. It's very, very funny.
Which show is that?
Episodes.
Oh, episodes.
No, not Joey. No, that Bob beyond belief.
Yeah. No, episodes is excellent. Yeah, and I bet that's very, very true to life as well.
Oh no, yeah. There's a great bit in it where they're talking about, I think they're transferring a UK series, they've been successful called Lyman's Boys, and turning it into a US series because the joke, it gets turned into, goes from being a history teacher to being a hockey coach played by Matt LeBlanc rather than Richard Griffiths playing a history teacher, and in the English version, it was he was in love with the librarian, but she's a lesbian, so we can never actually have her. And Matt LeBlanc goes, you're going to make her straight. We got to have, because why? Because because you have 6 episodes of series, you did 4 series. That's one season in the States. If you've got nowhere to go narratively, then it was like, think, well, actually he's got a point. That's absolutely true. So it's very knowing. It's clearly, they based it upon their experiences working in the networks, for the networks in the States, and producing American sitcoms, and it's very, very funny. So if you haven't seen it, I think you can. Season 1 and 2 are already on Netflix. I'm getting paid for every plug, I think. 50p a plug.
It's interesting you say that about the story arcs and where characters are going and so on. There is I can't remember which website it is. If I remember by the time this podcast goes out, I'll put it in the thread underneath. But it goes through basically US sitcoms from the 60s onwards, and it's the characters that just suddenly disappear from these sitcoms. These long, or they suddenly get replaced.
That's the funniest one, when they suddenly change the actor halfway through, like no one's ever going to notice.
Yeah,
they did that on Roseanne, didn't they? Didn't they change Roseanne's daughter?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So it's actually really quite entertaining, and if I remember, I'll put the link in under here. Right, before we wrap up, another bit of TV news. Alexander Armstrong seems to be on a bit of a roll at the minute, and he's going to voice the new Danger Mouse series, which is coming back to Kids TV now. This got us thinking, Kids TV, what did we enjoy watching when we were kids? And we can go over quite a age range here, because we've got Steve who's in his 50s, and then we come back to
Oh.
Come back to Mark, who's obviously in his teens. So,
Which Mark?
yeah, we'll let the audience decide. So, in terms of kids' TVs or kids' TV, what was the best TV show? And I'm going to say Grange Hill. That was, and the only reason I enjoyed watching that was because I was told I wasn't allowed to.
I thought you were going to say for the big sausage at the beginning. That was legendary.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a challenge because obviously my parents had said you are not what, because it was the whole Zambo drugs storyline when I was a kid. So I was not allowed to watch it because they thought it was, all about, basically. And
but it's endured, I think Just Say No and, Roland. Where are you going, Roland?
Tucker Jenkins, Eton.
Yeah, Tucker as well. He got AIDS, didn't he?
Do you remember the spin-off of Tucker's Luck?
Didn't get AIDS.
With Alan, the judo expert, and the guy, and I can't remember his name. He was the black lad who played for Crystal Palace. He went on to play for Crystal Palace reserves and then got a really terrible injury. Danny, is that right? I have to go look that up. It's all coming back to me now.
I vaguely remember it, but clearly you don't know a lot better than I do, Mark.
Yeah, that's better than I thought. I didn't even know I knew that.
Suddenly you turned to fucking Rain Man.
Tucker's Luck, quality.
Like a 3, 2, 1 question.
Forgotten TV show from the early 80s, and suddenly you're all over it.
Yeah, you're hitting my level now. And on the similar vein, Jossie's Giants I like Jossie's Giants. Everyone remember that? It was written by Sid Waddell, the darts commentator, about a kids' football team. I remember Jossie's Giants.
No idea.
Yeah, Jossie's Giants.
I can't remember that.
That was good. And they played in Derby County strips, which is, I support Derby, so that was another reason I quite liked it.
I always liked Mr. Ben.
Yeah, it was a big
Ben,
favourite. How many episodes of that were there?
Probably, actually, very few, apparently, weren't there?
Very few.
Well, there was Mr. Ben and there was Bod as well. Bod.
Bod. Oh my God.
I like Bagpuss. That was always good. And the Clangers. I really like the Clangers. I mean, there was some good drugs going around clearly in the 70s on kids' TV programs.
I like the Clangers more than old.
Very left field.
Yeah, so we'll not mention somebody fixing something.
Not that one. I sat down and watched in the summer holiday. Start of the summer holiday, I sat down and watched Camberwick Green, the first episode of Camberwick Green, with my 5-year-old daughter. And honestly, it was. You remember Windy Miller, presumably?
Yeah.
Yeah, the episode centred around him getting pissed on Scrumpy, so he couldn't do his job. He was asleep at the mill, and the baker had turned up and gave him loads of jip about that, the fact he needed to get with the times and industrialise and all this stuff. And I think this is absolutely brilliant. They don't do this now. The lead character getting rat-arsed on Scrumpy. That's proper TV, that is. Watch it on YouTube. Honestly, you will not believe your eyes.
I'm going to. I was going to say, obviously the other classic is the Magic Roundabout, for me.
Yeah.
Never watched it.
Well, no, because that's when you weren't born.
Mr. Botwright, come on, you must have some.
Oh,
He-Man.
I preferred the kind of cartoons with a slight sci-fi twist. Brave Star. I don't know if anyone remembers that one.
Battle to the Planets. Remember that one?
He-Man. Mask. Mask was good.
Or was that the from the film? The offshoot of the film?
No. There were vehicles that changed into kind of, just different vehicles, actually.
Isn't that rubbish Transformers?
No, it was very good. They sold toys. They had masks. Count Duckula, though, if bringing it all the way back to Danger Mouse, Count Duckula was a personal favourite. Because, of course, as we all know, he originally appeared in Danger Mouse, and that's why David Jason voiced Count Duckula. What I did love about those old series, though, was the amount of shots that just got reused. Because Danger Mouse, in particular, just used to reuse, kind of 10 seconds at a time, just to kind of pad out. Well, we should talk about padding, but, one episode. And that's Kids TV on the AVForums podcast.
Yeah, series I used to watch when I was a kid that I really liked, but I don't think anyone else ever saw it or had ever heard of it. And it wasn't until I found it on IMDb that even I began to question my own sanity. I thought maybe I imagined this show. It was called Star Maidens. and it was about a planet where the women were in charge and the men were slaves. And they,
Why
see
did
why
that
you
stick
like
in
that.
your memory?
well, it was a science fiction film back when science fiction TV shows when they weren't that common, and I quite like the idea of role reversal. Yeah, well, honestly, not only did it exist, I bought the DVD just so I could watch it again. Oh, it was shit. I really,
What a surprise.
yeah, the effects I thought were really good when I was about 10. Rubbish.
Metal Mickey?
Oh yeah, I used to really fancy the girl in Metal Mickey.
The robot.
Yeah, he was nice set of metal bars there.
He had a catchphrase
That
as well,
produced by
didn't he?
Mickey DeLenz from the Monkees.
Yes. I think
Yes, yeah, it could have been.
Is that why it was called Mickey?
What was his catchphrase?
He had a catchphrase, didn't he? He used to stick his thumbs up and wake from side to side and say something.
Oh, yeah, he didn't.
Oh, I can't
God.
remember.
And the old grandma sitting in the corner.
Who played the grandma? What was her name?
Irene somebody.
Irene Handel. Irene Handel.
Did result in quite a good song by Suede.
Rent a Ghost?
Oh, Rent a
Brilliant.
Ghost.
Rent a Ghost is brilliant.
It was awesome.
That was funny. Again, I think some serious drugs were going around the writer's room on that one.
Yeah, it seems to be like
Not with the
70s
ball.
and 80s. There, yeah, some very strange things going on.
I used to live down the street from the guy. Do you remember Picture Box? It was on Granada TV. I can't remember exactly what happened. I was quite young. Do you remember it, Steve?
I do not.
Is this a confession, Mark?
No, yeah, it's a 70s TV star.
What
living
did
down
he
the road.
do?
I'm going no further, but I don't, no. But I just the guy just lived next door, but like 3 or 4 from me. But I was too young to really appreciate the program. I'm gonna have to go and look it up. On
I used to really enjoy watching Take Heart, which was made in Bristol with Arbor Animation, who animated Morph. That was really good because I liked it when those days. These days, if you're on TV, you have to be like 18 or 20 and good looking. But you used to have old people doing stuff in my day.
Yeah, look where
Yeah,
I
look what happened.
Yeah, good point.
Right, I think we've gone far enough before we get ourselves into some real bother.
I need to-
Right, okay, so that wraps up the AVForums podcast for yet another week, and we managed to make it to at least an hour long, or it should be round about that. There is quite a bit to cut out at the end there. My thanks to Steve Withers.
I can't do it yet, Phil. I lost the page. Hang on. Hang on.
Get into character, are you?
I was trying to get in a character and I couldn't even do it with a straight face.
It's alright, they can't see your face.
Thank God.
Small mercies.
You still put some makeup on though.
You've bled with Wallish, now bleed with me.
Mark Hodgkinson.
was worth waiting for, wasn't it? We all end up dead. It's just a question of how and way. It was Irish. Oh, sorry.
Mark Botwright.
I'm not the Pope.
You know,
It went a bit cranky there, I'll admit that. Okay.
Oh, cranky, it went a bit.
You want to try again?
You think it'll be better on the second take?
Well, let's give it a go.
I'm not the Pope. I saw too much Super Gran as a kid, alright?
She was a Geordie.
Was she?
And Simon Crust.
Some men are longer than others.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news and video. Plus, why not leave us a rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. Thanks very much again. I'm Phil Hinton and we'll see you again next Wednesday.